Hello, welcome to Courage Bacchus. We have three important guests today. We have Amanda Frappier, also James McWilliam, and Ruth Blackburn.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Great. So I want you guys to introduce yourselves and give us a little bit about your background.
Okay, hi, I'm Amanda Frappier, and this is my sign name. Both my parents are deaf, my grandparents as well. My aunts and uncles are deaf or hard of hearing as well.
Wow.
Hi, I'm James McWilliam, and this is my sign name. My parents are also deaf, and both my brothers are deaf. Hi, my name is Ruth Blackburn, and this is my sign name. Both my parents are deaf as well. My mom's deaf, and my dad is deaf-blind.
Wow. So growing up, what would you give advice to other kids who are growing up in the same sort of situation as you?
In some ways, it was difficult growing up in my situation because my school life was really separate from my home life. None of the other kids at school had deaf parents. You know, at home I would be around deaf kids or other hearing kids with deaf parents and with my deaf parents. So there was a lot of challenges to have that separation. I didn't have a lot of intermingling between my school life and my home life. Sometimes I felt lonely in that world because communication wasn't always clear. You know, at school I would communicate with hearing people, no problem, and then sometimes at home I wouldn't be able to communicate as clearly. As I grew up, that perception changed a little bit. I felt more comfortable communicating with deaf people. I met more deaf people and was able to communicate more easily. For me, you know, a lot of my friends thought it was cool that I had deaf parents. They thought I was lucky. And sometimes I found it tough. I mean, I would go into the bank with my parents and interpret for them, or they'd get me to interpret a phone call about a death in the family, and I'd have to tell my parents that these things happen. But I mean, in most ways, it was really fun.
That's cool. It is a challenge. So how did you guys all learn to talk? Ruth?
Oh, well, for me, my parents' family, they lived far away. We didn't see them a lot. So for me, my parents kept the TV on so I could hear that. They'd turn the radio on so I would listen to that. And also I started preschool 2 years early so that I could make sure I could learn to speak properly. Two different ways I learned to speak. Until I was 4, we used a tape player, and I would listen to stories before bed. And my grandmother taught me as well. She would teach me how to communicate. Until I was about 3 or 4, I just used sign language. I didn't speak. I wouldn't speak. My parents' brothers had an older brother who was hearing, and he would speak. But he would just whisper mostly. So I would just whisper. Mostly I would just whisper to him. If I had to speak, I would just whisper. And then when I started school, that's when I started to speak.
Oh, wow. You're just whispering to everyone and listening to the radio and learning from your grandmother. It's very interesting, very cool. So now, did you guys ever feel embarrassed having parents that were deaf?
Never. No, me neither. I did. I remember when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I took the bus. I was sitting on the bus with my mom at the time, and my mom was signing, and people started looking at us. And I felt myself getting embarrassed. And my mom noticed and, said, fine, if you don't want to talk with me, then we don't talk. And for the rest of the day, she ignored me. I'd try and talk with her, and she wouldn't talk. She wouldn't respond. And so the next time I went out with her, I remembered, it doesn't matter if people are looking. It doesn't matter what other people think. Didn't need to feel embarrassed about that at all. So I don't feel embarrassed anymore at all.
So now if you had, let's say parent-teacher interviews or meetings at the school, how would that happen?
Well, growing up, I would interpret my parent-teacher interviews until about grade 4, and then they would hire an interpreter after that, and they would have access through an interpreter that way. But a funny story, the first time, there was an interpreter. I started signing, and my mom was like, no, relax, we have an interpreter. And I said, no, I'm interpreting. I'm here, I can help. And the interpreter, tapped me and said, don't worry, you can relax. I'm here. I'm going to be helping you. And that sort of got through to me. And, and I could relax and be a kid again. So that was interesting for me. I would interpret a lot of the time for my family. It wasn't until high school that they got an interpreter. My father was always fighting for an interpreter for the school, but sometimes they would write back and forth or I would interpret, but eventually he did get an interpreter. I never had an interpreter come into our school. My parents would write back and forth with the teacher, but I never saw an interpreter in those kinds of meetings.
Wow, that's tough. Oh, wow. Just, gives me goosebumps. So did your family socialize and go out a lot?
My parents would always out and about. They would have our school friends over for birthdays and things like that. We'd go to deaf events, or go to 4x4 in the summer. It was nice. I had both worlds. I had hearing friends and deaf friends, and they made sure I had all of those kinds of people around all the time. My hearing friends would love to go to deaf events with me. They were so curious about it, and they liked to see that kind of thing. So it was nice to have both kind of integrated in one space for me. For me, there was no problem really, but sometimes if my hearing friends would come over, they would, print the ABCs for them, and my dad sometimes would tease them and say, tease their sign language, but, they always said that I could have people over. But, they would come over and see that I couldn't call my parents out, out. And they wanted to see that it was normal too. My situation was just like anybody else's. My parents were very involved in the deaf community growing up. Holidays and the summertime, we were always very involved. Lots of people always around. It was really fun. My mom was a big advocate in the deaf community in Ontario. So I saw a lot of advocacy happening for deaf rights, for women, lots of different advocacy groups she was a part of.
Oh, that's really nice. What was your mom's name?
Her name was Eva Frappier.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
And you have siblings that are deaf?
No, my brother is hearing. And my younger sister is hearing as well. Both of my brothers are deaf. One has autism as well, but he died in a car accident in 2001.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No problem. I have one younger sister, and she's hearing.
So now do your siblings all sign?
Yep. Yeah, my sister signs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool.
Wow. Are you guys really close with your parents?
Oh, I am, yeah.
Somewhat.
Somewhat, yeah. My mom passed away 12 years ago, but I'm very, very close with my dad. I fight with my parents. Sometimes we don't always communicate, but I'm close with them. I still consider them close.
And your brother as well? You close with your brother?
Yeah, I'm very close with my brother. When my other brother died in the car crash, we, bonded, and we really, we were together all the time. We'd play hockey. We'd just stick together after that happened.
So now, how do your parents feel about socializing with your hearing friends?
Oh, my parents do it all the time. My mom loves to go with me to my friend's place. Like if we go bowling or we're going out to play pool or something, my mom's there, She loves dinner parties. She loves going to people's houses. She's always up to come over. My friends always invite my mom too, because they really like hanging out with her too. She loves to hang out with us. Yeah, we'll go out camping or to the pub or something. My parents like to, come out and show support and support my friends. It doesn't matter who's around. It's the more the merrier. Right, yeah, I remember my mom used to always teach my friends some, basic signs. She would show them, hi, how are you, and things like that, and she, would want to show a little bit about what sign language is like, and my friends would learn from her.
Oh, wow. That's really exciting. That must have been really exciting for you guys. Let's just take a quick break, and we'll talk a little bit more after that, okay? I've got lots more questions for you. Get ready. It's great. This is so interesting. We'll be right back with Courage of Bacchus.
Don't settle for just being yourself. Be a new you in only minutes. Why be you when you can be me?
Your before photograph.
Perfect image packaging. Oh, why be you when you can be me?
Step up for your after photograph.
Why let someone else decide who you should be?
How Racism Affects My Life by Sarah Ruff. To start with, it hurts when I hear my uncle tell me that all Chinese should go back to China and stop stealing jobs. Or when the white kids say that the brown kids smell funny. To see the pain in my best friend's eyes when she was beat up for being South Asian, and when the guy at the grocery store kicks out the black kids because he thinks they're all thieves. It makes me wonder, if everyone is racist, is anyone really safe?
Hello, welcome back to Courage Bacchus. We're here with some children who have deaf parents, and we've got Amanda, James, and Ruth. It's very interesting to hear their experiences, and I've got lots of questions about what it was like to grow up with deaf parents. So now, when your parents were sleeping or anything, did you make a lot of noise just to see what you could do, or how did you get them to pay attention?
Well, I did, for sure. If I wanted something and my parents said no, I used to bang on the steps all the way up the stairs, or I would throw things to get their attention. In deaf culture, it's easy to ignore somebody, right? You just look away. So I would, throw something or, throw a pillow to get them to look at me, jump up and down, or bang around, so they could feel the vibrations.
How about you, James?
Yeah, me too. I'd bang on the floor, or I'd flash the lights repeatedly. That was a big one. Yeah, or throw things, that too.
Throw things. What kind of things did you throw?
Cups.
Oh, you need like a ball.
Two younger brothers, right? I had to. If my mom was in the kitchen, and I wanted something and I didn't want to get up and go get her, I would throw a pillow off the couch and hopefully she would look over at me and, I could be like, okay, well, can you bring me my hot chocolate?
Oh, all of you would throw in things.
But sometimes I broke some things. I broke my mom's favorite glass statue and I threw a pillow and it hit it and shattered. So after that, I wasn't throwing pillows anymore.
It's so funny, pounding on stuff and throwing stuff and getting attention. I mean, you get these little lazy kids throwing a statue. But, you know, it's funny to hear those stories, too.
Well, sometimes music, too, if I turn up the bass, I could get their attention that way. My parents would, you know, come into the room and see what was going on, and then I have to turn down my bass.
So now, when you guys had people come to the door, ring the doorbell, what would you do? Did you get the door for them, or what would you do?
At my house, we had a doorbell that would flash a light. Same as with the phone. When the phone rang, a light would flash, and they would know.
And you?
Yeah, we had a light at our place, too. Sometimes I would go to the door and answer. But we also had a dog, a hearing dog, so the dog would tell that my parents, you know, if somebody was at the door or whatever, they would go over. My dad's really creative, so he built a set of lights outside our house. You know, the green light was for our front door, the yellow light was for if a baby was crying, and the red light was for if the phone was ringing. So he wired it to the whole house, so we had lights flashing all over, and he would know what was going on.
Your parents built that?
My dad made it, yeah. It was really cool. It kind of looked like,
Wow.
you know, in England, you know, those traffic lights?
Oh, wow. I can't believe the technology, you know? That's so cool, so creative. Wow. So now your parents just had relied on you to do some interpreting for the bank or doctor's offices. Did you guys all notice that same experience?
Yeah, yeah, we did.
Any good stories to share about when any of that might have happened when you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean, for me, my parents knew that there were interpreters available, but, you know, sometimes they wouldn't be able to get one, or it would be a private appointment that they wouldn't want an interpreter present for, so they would rely on me and my brother. So we would, sometimes my sister as well, but we would take turns interpreting for various appointments. I mean, for anything, really. Anything and everything.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, I didn't always want to interpret. I was kind of a lazy signer, and, you know, sometimes I would call to, you know, order pizza or something like that, but sometimes I just didn't want to. But in the end, I mean, I did help out. I mean, I have to. They're my parents.
Yeah.
I mean, I was the oldest, so I did most of the interpreting for my parents. I did like welfare meetings or at the bank or parent-teachers, doctors, appointments. Sometimes I'd get mad because I had a younger sister, but they never asked her for help interpreting. They always asked me. So, you know, I did get frustrated, you know, because I wouldn't be able to go out and have fun. You know, I'd be waiting in the office, you know, to interpret something, and my sister would get to go and play, or she'd get to color or something, you know, and I had to sit up straight. I had to be paying attention, and I'd have to be the interpreter in the situation.
Yeah. I imagine that's very overwhelming to have them depending on you for that. And it would be, you know, as a young person, a lot of language you didn't really understand. Was that stressful? Was it overwhelming? Was it annoying?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'd get frustrated if I was interpreting. You know, it was the 80s, 90s, I was interpreting for my parents. And, you know, I would get frustrated because, for example, you know, the professional person present, you know, sometimes I wouldn't understand them, or sometimes I wouldn't like their tone. You know, so if I didn't like it, you know, I would really try and show what kind of attitude they had so that my parents could respond, you know. If I felt that they had a bad attitude, I'd really try and show that.
Yeah, true. Yeah, what about you, James?
You know, I never really felt like that was a big problem. you know, not understanding or whatever. Sometimes I didn't want to. I was kind of like, I wanted to be left alone. I wanted to, you know, do my own thing. But other than that, you know, some days I really did love it. I loved to go and help out my parents at the doctor, help my brother out interpreting whatever he needed, you know. That was my job. I was the oldest. Sometimes if the person I was interpreting for said a word I didn't understand, you know, if I was really young and I had no idea what that meant, I'd have to ask for clarification. And finally, once they had explained that to me, I could interpret it, you know. So, I mean, I was a young kid, you know, they didn't realize that they had to explain it differently. They couldn't just say the terminology, they had to explain what each word meant. You know, sometimes at the bank, for instance, you know, they were talking about interest, and I didn't know what that meant. So I had to, you know, I sort of made up a sign that sort of went along with that, but I had to make sure my parents were understanding at the same time. Yeah, I mean, that communication, you know, if something's going over our head, yeah, there's a lot of miscommunications that were happening when we were kids.
Wow. You know, it sort of just really gets me thinking about the experience as a young kid, you know, being 8 and trying to talk about financial issues or the frustration that must have come with, you know, trying to display someone's attitude. I love that you tried to do that, and I can understand there being miscommunications. Now, do you feel like it would have been better to have an interpreter, or do you think it's better to have the child do the interpreting?
I feel like there should have been a professional interpreter present. Because I agree with what they said, you know, if a child is trying to interpret something that's quite complex, they end up, you know, fingerspelling something out or interpreting it incorrectly, so miscommunication does happen. And I think with an interpreter, our life would have been a little bit easier, to tell you the truth. Yeah. You know, sometimes, you know, I feel like with an interpreter present, things go faster as well. If I'm interpreting, sometimes it would take half an hour to 45 minutes for a 10-minute, what should have been a 10-minute conversation.
Oh, yeah. The time really stretches on when that's happening.
Exactly. Do you have
Anything to add, Ruth?
No, I mean, well, you know what I was talking about, the interest at the bank? You know, I don't look back, I'm not angry with what happened ever. I never feel that way. You know, they needed help. They didn't have another choice. So, you know, growing up, I wasn't angry at them. You know, now as an adult, you know, I look back and I sort of do realize what I missed out on. But at the same time, you know, that experience did give me a lot of wonderful life experience. And I can use that now in my roster for my adult life. So I think there was a lot of positive things about that.
Yeah, do you guys agree? I see you.
Yeah, there's a lot of great learning experiences doing that. Yeah, growing up, I didn't really feel like they were depending on me or something. It just felt normal. I was just interpreting a lot of the time, you know. I didn't really feel like, oh, this is not my job or this or that. You know, I just felt like that was my life. And, you know, growing up, meeting other people and meeting interpreters, I sort of realized that, you know, maybe that wasn't always, you know, maybe that shouldn't have been happening, but at the time I didn't notice. You know, sometimes when we're, you know, teenagers, you know, we kind of turned a blind eye to it. But, you know, as an adult, definitely I look back and I have a better understanding of what my experience was. And, you know, I mean, looking back, I wish it could have been more professional, but can't change that now. You know, now my parents do have a lot more access to interpreters. Like, for example, if my dad has to go to the hospital frequently because of his medical issues, and, you know, sometimes he has to go at 3 in the morning, and, you know, I can't really interpret. I'm emotionally involved. I'm crying. I'm, you know, invested in there. And now with having an interpreter, I can actually be a support system for my father. and I can say, it's going to be okay and this and that, and then the interpreter can be responsible for what's going on with the doctors and this and that. So I think for now it's so great that we have that access to interpreters, especially for medical situations. And in the past, we had to wait so long for an interpreter, and I feel like now, in an emergency situation, you can get an interpreter in under 45 minutes, which is so great.
Yeah, wow. Got one last question for you. If you see an interpreter with your parents, do you feel like it's you're satisfied with that interaction, or how do you feel about seeing that?
Well, the first time I saw an interpreter, I remember I told you at the parent-teacher interview when I was in grade 4, and I got a little upset. I said, this is my job. I'm the interpreter. I've been doing this for years. So, it kind of took the interpreter reassuring me, saying I'm here to help. But then when I did finally sit down and watch somebody else interpret, it was really cool. I learned some new signs that I hadn't seen before, and it gave me a chance to kind of let my mind wander and just be there as a kid, daydreaming.
So interesting. We've got Codas we've been having this conversation with, Child of Deaf Adults. You can check everything out on the website, Children with Deaf Adults. There's all kinds of information. Thank you, Amanda, James, and Ruth, all for coming and sharing your stories with us. It's been so great, and thank you for watching Courage Bacchus. Thank you.
Thank you.